welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to explore a dark side of history, unethical human experiments conducted in the name of progress in science, medicine, or national security. So in this video we'll talk about such experiments, starting from bad and gradually moving towards the worst. And I promise, the last two are a nightmare. Please be warned, some of the content discussed is deeply disturbing and not suitable for sensitive viewers. In 1971, a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo wanted to explore the impact of perceived power. He created a simulated jail in Stanford University's basement and selected 24 mentally and physically healthy individuals. Participants were randomly assigned as guards or prisoners. Prisoners were arrested by actual police and handed over to the experimenters. After that, they were subjected to simulated prison conditions, constantly wearing uniforms with no underwear and ankle chains to make them feel controlled and humiliated. The guards took their roles very seriously. The experiment quickly spiraled out of control, with guards becoming cruel and inflicting physical and psychological punishment on the prisoners. The prisoners experienced deep depression and disorientation. The experiment was abruptly ended when an outside observer expressed shock less than a week after it began. Leo Stanley was an American surgeon who served as the chief surgeon of the prison and was most notable for performing unethical human experiments on inmates during his tenure. He hypothesized that aging and behavior could be influenced by male sex hormones, specifically testosterone. Stanley harvested testicles from recently executed inmates and transplanted them into living inmates in an attempt to rejuvenate them, curb their criminal tendencies, and improve their behavior. More than 600 inmates became the victims of Stanley's crazy theory, and when there were a shortage of human testicles, he went on to inject liquefied animal testicles into the prisoners. He never sought consent from the subjects and was unable to substantiate his results scientifically. Dr. Loretta Bender was a renowned psychiatrist in the mid-20th century who became infamous for conducting controversial experiments on children. As the head of Bellevue Hospital's Children's Psychiatric Department, Bender conducted these experiments to investigate potential treatments for schizophrenia and autism. Her approach, known as the Bender method, involved giving children LSD, a powerful hallucinogenic drug, and other psychotropics before subjecting them to electroconvulsive therapy. ECT involved sending electrical currents through the brains of her patients, often resulting in memory loss and personality changes. The LSD trials aimed to control and manipulate human behavior. She even administered electroconvulsive therapy to children as young as 3 years old. Despite the controversy, Bender never faced any criminal charges for her actions. The cell served as a laboratory where the Soviet secret police conducted experiments on various deadly poisons. The primary objective was to develop tasteless poisons that couldn't be detected during autopsies. The victims of these experiments were prisoners who were subjected to substances like ricin, mustard gas, digitoxin, curare, and cyanide. These poisons were administered through meals, beverages, medications, or injections. The experimenters even explored the possibility of introducing poison through the skin by spraying or moistening it with a toxic solution. They tested the effects of each poison on a diverse range of subjects, considering their different physical parameters and ages to obtain a comprehensive understanding of the consequences. The victims who didn't die immediately endured suffering for 10 to 14 days before ultimately being killed. The Aversion Project was a brutal program conducted in the South African Defense Force between 1971 to 1989. Aimed at curing homosexuality, it subjected countless soldiers to inhumane practices like extremely high-voltage electroshock therapy, chemical castration, and forced sexual reassignment surgery. Psychologist Aubrey Levin, who was instrumental in the program, saw homosexuality as an illness to be rectified. These illegal practices, held in military hospitals, largely targeted young, closeted soldiers unaware of their rights. Investigations have revealed about 900 forced sexual reassignment surgeries were performed under the program, many without consent or under duress. Life in these hospitals hardly focused on healing, with armed guards patrolling the halls and drugs used liberally on all patients. The Tuskegee syphilis study, which began in 1932, aimed to track the progression of syphilis in about 600 African American men in Alabama. Initially, this wasn't necessarily with ill intent, since syphilis didn't have a cure, but by 1947, penicillin became the recognized cure. However, the physicians involved in the study chose not to treat the infected patients, prioritizing the experiment over human lives. The men received placebos as their conditions worsened, leading to blindness, insanity, and death. Shockingly, the study continued for decades, even after investigators discovered it in the 1960s. It was only in 1972, after being leaked to the public, that the project finally came to an end, resulting in over 100 deaths and lasting for 40 years. Project 4.1 was a classified medical study conducted by the United States during the Kessel-Bravo nuclear test in 1954. It was designed to observe the effects of radiation on humans, especially how radioactive fallout is absorbed and distributed within the human body. It focused particularly on the residents of the Marshall Islands, who were exposed to radioactive fallout from the Bravo test. The residents were treated for uncertain conditions, for which they were given little information, and none of them knew they were part of any study. All the while, of course, they were also dealing with the effects of radiation poisoning, various forms of cancer, and congenital disabilities, all while their requests for help were largely brushed aside. MKUltra was a secret US government project during the Cold War aimed at using mind control as a weapon. The project involved various experiments on psychological manipulation, including hypnosis, electroshock therapy, radiation exposure, and mind-altering drugs. A significant number of tests involved extreme physical and psychological torture. Participants in these experiments were often unaware of the true nature of the studies, and specific groups like prisoners and mental hospital patients were targeted. The experiences of these individuals were disturbing, with reports of feeling like their bones were melting or losing their sense of humanity. Investigations in the 1970s led to its public exposure, triggering massive outrage and leading to its official termination. Many believe its methodologies continue to be used covertly. Some documents survived, revealing the project's vast scope, but many details remain unknown. During the 1940s and 1950s, radiation was a major concern for scientists who wanted to understand its effects on the human body. However, the experiments involved unethical human experimentation without proper consent. Examples include the Vanderbilt nutrition study, where almost 800 poor pregnant women were knowingly given drugs containing radioactive iron, and an experiment where school children were fed radioactive calcium with government support. Another disturbing experiment involved injecting approximately 30 patients, some of whom weren't as terminally ill as presumed, with highly radioactive plutonium. These injections were kept secret to avoid public outcry, and consent was rarely obtained. One of the patients was a 2-year-old child, who died less than a year after being injected. Nazi experiments on twins were a horrific part of the Holocaust, where twin children were subjected to pseudoscientific medical experiments under the direction of Dr. Josef Mengele. He hoped that by understanding the genetic makeup of twins, the Nazis could increase the birth rate of the Aryan race. Out of the approximately 1,500 pairs of twins who were first to participate, only about 200 individuals survived. Dr. Mengele and his team subjected the twins to a range of procedures, including but not limited to unnecessary amputations, castrations, and experimental surgeries. Other cruel procedures included efforts to change eye color by injecting chemicals into the eyes, intentional infections with diseases, starvation, and extreme psychological torture. He also carried out genetic studies, including attempting to artificially create identical twins by sewing twins together. While Nazi doctors are well known for their atrocities, Japan had Unit 731, a secret research branch operating in China. Unit 731 focused on testing the limits of the human body, conducting cruel and deadly experiments. Prisoners were subjected to vivisections without anesthesia to observe their organs before death. Others were subjected to brutal frostbite tests, where their limbs were frozen and then sawed out. And, if that wasn't enough, their limbs were sometimes amputated for no reason other than curiosity. In other instances, victims were subjected to situations such as starvation, dehydration, deadly G-forces in centrifuges, or even having heavy objects dropped on them. Additionally, there were weapons tests involving flamethrowers, bayonets, nerve agents, and exposure to X-ray radiation. The exact number of casualties remains unknown, but thousands of men, women, and children lost their lives.